Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Allen, and I'm a social worker from the Brookline Council on Aging. This is Living with COVID. It is the second convening of a conversation among older adults who live in Brookline about what it's been like to live with COVID. And so we're going to be talking about where people are at, what strategies they're using to adapt, where their understanding is at with respect to the threats of COVID. And so we'll start by going around, getting an introduction from each of our panelists. We have 7 great panelists here to have this conversation. And then we're going to have a free-flowing conversation. So panelists may ask questions. I may ask questions. If you have a question and you'd like to drop it in the chat, I'll see it. We may use it, we may not, but feel free to do that. And panelists, feel free to jump in. And if we haven't heard from you in a little while, I'll pull you back into the conversation. Going around for some brief introductions, let's start with Ruth.
Hello, I'm Ruth Seidman. I'm in my 80s, and I live in a condominium in a building with 4 units.
All right, thanks, Ruth. And over to you, Rosaline.
Hi, my name is Rosaline Lowe. I've been a Brookline resident for over 25 years and own a condominium here in Brookline. It's a duplex, so it's 2 separate owners, and it's over in Washington Square.
All right, thanks, Rosaline. And over to you, John.
My name's John C. I'm 75. I live here in Brookline near Coolidge Corner in a 34-unit condominium.
All right, thanks, John. And Fran.
Hi, I'm Fran Perler. I'm in my 60s. I live in a 2-family Victorian in Coolidge Corner, and I've lived here since the 80s.
Thanks, Fran. Betsy?
Hi, I'm in my early 70s, and I'm a native of Brookline, and I live in a single-family house near the high school by myself.
All right, thanks, Betsy. And B?
Hi, I'm B. Mikulecki. I'm in my 80s, and I live in Coolidge Corner in a large condominium building, and I live alone.
Thanks, B. And Susan.
And I'm Susan Granoff. I live in a 3-unit condominium building near Coolidge Corner. I'm in my mid-70s, and I've lived in Brookline over 30 years.
All right. Well, thank you all for brief introductions. Last time that we talked about where folks were at in terms of their sense of level of safety and risk with doing a variety of things. And so I thought we'd start off somewhere similar today. And one thing that I know has been a big topic throughout is how are folks feeling about going to the doctors or going to the dentist, some kind of medical type appointment. So where are you all at with that kind of excursion out into the world?
Well, I can tell you about my experience. I had to get an MRI, and that was really daunting because even though the facility was well protected, I mean, there were only 2 of us in the waiting room. You have to go into that long tube, and you wonder, was someone in there before who had the virus? But I guess I survived because that was more than 2 weeks ago, and I didn't catch anything. So I feel like now I feel confident that I can see medical people without worrying.
I've been to the dentist for a cleaning, and I've been to the eye doctor. And I think medical facilities are used to cleanliness and infection control, and they're probably pretty among the safest places to be, other than just in your home.
Yeah. I went to the dentist 2 weeks ago. My appointment was scheduled and rescheduled, since April. So I finally went in, and it was fine. I think they followed all the CDC guidelines, and I felt very comfortable. And I went back last week and got a fill-in, and that was okay too. And then my doctor called and said, "Don't forget, you have a physical on Wednesday." So I'm going back again to the doctor's office. I think it'll be okay. I felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I haven't actually been on any medical visits, and I've passed on having my teeth cleaned or a regular eye checkup. I will be getting a flu shot. I'm just being extra cautious, but I don't perceive it as being especially dangerous. I just haven't felt the need to keep up with having my teeth cleaned at this point. I take really good care of my teeth. But I think perhaps maybe in the fall, I might, venture out and do more with seeing medical doctors. But so far, that hasn't been on my list of things that I've had to do.
Well, it's good to get a sense of where some of you are at with that. And it sounds from that first bit of a go around like there's a sense of, I kind of have my game plan, where I'm at with respect to these kinds of excursions. And I know that one of the sort of underlying dynamics with COVID and whether, you're going to the doctors or the dentist or trying to stay away, is that there's been a significant reduction in seeing people. And so I thought maybe we could take some time and also just ask, how are you doing? How's it been? Yeah, Betsy, go ahead.
I think that there's a feeling hanging over that, we are always questioning, like, what's the next step? What's going to be all right? And I know I've gone on a few medical appointments, but the big leap I took since the last time we spoke was I started to swim again. Where I swim, they made new protocols where you reserve a lane, and it's very regimented. Unfortunately, you have to leave wet because the locker rooms aren't open. But I have to say, it really changed my life from feeling starting to wonder how this is going to work. And it's hard to live alone and only walk the dog. And what was I going to be doing for myself? And so the swimming really, it just changed my outlook. I started to feel like markedly better when I knew that I had a swim like twice a week and that I could reserve this lane. So that's really been a game changer for me.
Well, I've been going on some outings with my daughter or with someone else in the car, and that's made a big difference in how
one of the things
I
I've discovered.
Hello?
Having a little lag issue there, Susan. I think you're frozen, so you might not be getting our feedback. So go ahead, B, and
sorry.
keep telling us your story.
I decided it was okay to go in a car with the windows open with my daughter, and we took a day trip to Marblehead, and then I took another day trip with someone else in the car with the windows open, and it seems to be really wonderful for my morale to just be able to go places with other people. And when you get there, you just sort of distance yourself from anyone else who's there. And it worked. Everybody seems to be respecting that. So that's been good for me.
Ruth, I see you trying to jump in. How's your morale? How you been doing?
Well, one thing that was good is that we can get books from the library now. So I've been over a couple of times. We can't go in, but we can order books and pick them up. And even that is nice to get to be able to do. I must say, though, I was on my way home from there, and I saw it was a beautiful day, and people were out in the restaurants out on the side where the tables are out on the sidewalk. And I must say, I felt kind of bad that it isn't something I feel comfortable doing yet. And now that other people are starting to get out, in a way, it makes it a little harder.
Yeah, I've been venturing out a lot more. Actually, I've been going back to the health club, which, friends of mine say, you really want to go in there? But I think this is the cleanest time to go to a health club because it is so clean. You see the cleaning people always walking behind you and cleaning the machines down. And so I've been doing that. And I have gone out a few times and on the sidewalk right here in Washington Square. And it felt fine, And I've gone out to day trips. We've gone to the beach, Revere Beach places, you know, Swampscott, which is a lovely town. I've never been there before. We took a ride out there a couple of weeks ago, and it was just lovely. So things are starting to feel a little better, but it's not quite there yet. You know, still have to be careful.
So I've, unlike everyone else, decided that early on, even in March, that if I stayed home, it was going to be crazy. And so I'm a birder and a walker, and I've been going to parks within a half an hour of my home and walking around. And I found that even during the beginning, before things opened up, to be really good for my morale. And as they got more crowded, I found that if I went to more of the dirt trails as opposed to the paved things, that it was better. And, you know, the occasional outside of Brookline, people aren't so great about wearing masks. The occasional person that wasn't wearing a mask, I would say, senior alert, or, you know, push them away. And most people, like when they saw me, especially when the gray was showing through, you know, would go to the side or put on their mask. But about 2 months ago, it sort of hit me that this was going to be for the long haul, and that I could deal with all this isolation and amusing myself for a couple of months, but did I want to do it for 6 months and a year? And my answer was no. So I had a jigsaw puzzle group, and I used to do ping pong at the senior center, and we restarted a smaller version of our puzzle group at one of my older friends' houses, and had a reduced number of people with no refreshments and masks, and we do that weekly. And then I decided that I needed more, and I live in old big Victorian, and I have a yard and a porch and a backyard. And so I, for the last 5 or 6 weeks, have been having what I call Porch Fest, which is once a week, people come for 3 or so hours, either part of the time or full time. And there's the outdoor puzzle group on one side of the porch and the chatters on the other side. And people just seem to be enjoying coming and talking. And, you know, people wear masks. They have their own little thermoses of water or whatever they're drinking. And I just found that I need these levels of social contact to keep my sanity. And I had a 4th of July barbecue that was, had about 10 people, and most of the people really enjoyed it and said it was their first group outing. And so I'm having a Labor Day barbecue. And I think because we're all people who are seniors, and because we're all taking care, and I know my sort of COVID buddies are doing things, and I have a COVID buddy who lives at Center Street who comes and birds with me also. We wear masks, we social distance, and, you know, let's face it, this isn't Florida or those places like Texas, and the transmission rates are under 1 or 2%. So I feel like I need these sort of social interactions, and I feel safe doing it with people that I know take the precautions I do.
May I? I think that one of the things I admire that, Fran, I think it's fantastic. And I know I get a boost from being with people and having some outdoor dinners with people in their yards. I think one of the challenges that's coming up is as the days get shorter and the weather gets colder, how are we going to maintain what we discussed when we were just meeting informally before the seminar? How do we maintain our social contacts and keep physical distance, but keep social connections. So we were talking about having not social distancing, but physical distancing. And how are we going to maintain that? Which I think is a challenge that's coming up. And it's I want to make sure that we don't like sink into that feeling of isolation, which all of your activities and the activities we're trying to do really stave that off and keep us feeling vital. But it's going to be more difficult as people who live alone when the the days are shorter and the nights are colder, and you can't hang out outside.
Well, I think that part of the thing is you can't really forget about warm clothes. You can wear really warm clothes and a warm hat and warm boots and go out every single day, even in the coldest winter. So you can still get out there. It's just a little more challenging.
Susan, I saw you wanted to jump in a minute
Yeah,
ago.
no, I mean, I guess I have a really different temperament or personality. I don't mind being home alone. And so it hasn't really impacted me that I'm still mostly locked down. I go out about once every 3 weeks. I go pick up library books, which like Ruth, I love doing. I go to Trader Joe's and I go to CVS, and that pretty much has been it. And but I'm also very much involved in town government. So I have lots of Zoom meetings. I'm a town meeting member. I'm an advisory committee member. I'm active on Brookline CAN's steering board. So there are lots of things that I'm doing. And of course, I have long conversations with friends and my family every day, but by phone. None of my family live in Massachusetts. They're in New Jersey. So, you know, it's not as though I'm missing out on their being able to drop by my house every weekend. But it hasn't been a psychological burden yet. I think in my mind, I'm prepared to do this through the spring. And then I'm thinking, okay, after that, it might get a bit depressing. But it seems to me that I'm enjoying the time that I have at home. In a lot of ways, my life has become a lot simpler. I don't have to worry about who I'm going to schedule for lunch, or how I'm going to go from one meeting to another meeting, or planning on vacations. It's just certain things have become simpler, and then other things have become a little bit more complicated. But I'm actually at this point not feeling very burdened by being home as much as I am. And it may change over time, but right now I'm feeling very comfortable.
My situation is similar to Susan's. My life has always been revolving around computers, and I maintain the Brookline CAD website, which has gotten much nicer since I've had a lot of time on my hands, and I do some other things. As a matter of fact, some of my friends in similar situations have joked about how, you know, your social life was pretty bad to start with if it, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic and it hasn't changed that much. What I do miss is most of I have some good friends and acquaintances in Brookline, but I don't socialize that much with them. I do have friends and relatives that I typically do things in the summer with. Some of them are scheduled events and some of them are just weekends on the water. I haven't done any of that, and I miss it.
It's funny because we've had such a great summer. I'm amazed that both of you seem to have stayed indoors instead of venturing out. You haven't had the urge to go out, be on the water, or just take a walk around the pond or anything like that?
I go out and do errands. I'm careful about spending time indoors. Supermarket's fine, that's in and out, errands like that, but I'm not in any rush to go to restaurants or bars or anything like that.
I miss going to the movie theater. That used to be
Wow.
something I loved doing. I watch movies, but the whole experience of going
Not
to
the
the
same.
movie theater.
Yeah.
But
I heard something just this morning that if you go to a movie where it's not a comedy, so not everybody's laughing and everybody's quiet, it's probably a better indoor space than most.
I have to say that the dog has, because there's no option about whether you're going to go out. I adopted this little dog in mid-April, and so 4 times a day I'm outside, and so I'm taking long walks. I'm going to the park. I'm talking to other people. That has been, it's enforced, and that will continue when it's cold. I will be bundling up. I will be heading out in the cold every day, 7 a.m. I'm out from 7 to 8 every morning, trying to knock out this little guy who's very energetic. And so it's that's really given me a new focus, which has been really helpful.
I saw something about a Scandinavian school somewhere that said there's nothing like, no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing.
Gets back to the point that Bea was making earlier about warm clothes can solve a lot of problems. Ruth, we haven't heard from you in a couple minutes. Where are you at with going and seeing people and how you're coping with the long term of this, right? Thinking maybe it'll go to spring, maybe longer. How's it sitting with you?
Well, I try to talk to people, someone on the phone every day, have some kind of, because I do live alone, have some kind of contact. And then I do, as some others have mentioned, I'm on different committees, and I do quite a bit on Zoom. And I have found different programs on Zoom I'm interested in. So that keeps me involved in some new ideas. But, and I do try to just get out and walk when I can, just to take a walk. And because the weather, when it hasn't been too hot, but we've had some nice weather, and I do enjoy it when it's a nice day, just getting outside.
In fact, that hot weather, Ruth, was more intimidating to me than any cold weather could ever be, because you get out there and just feel, exhausted in no time.
Right, it's entertaining.
In the winter, we can just put on a jacket.
And we'll really appreciate our masks then.
Oh, that's true.
Now you can tell that this group are true New Englanders. We all do. None of us minds the cold weather.
I wanted to talk about something else that I mentioned last time that is really turning out to be wonderful for me. And that is, I'm keeping a journal. And I don't write in it every day, but I write in it regularly. And I write about anything that seems to be important in my mind. And sometimes it's about the political situation, and sometimes it's about feeling lonely, and sometimes it's about something I read somewhere. But when you do that, you have a place to vent that you're the only person who's going to hear it. And as I'm looking back, I've been doing this since April. I've noticed, I'm noticing changes in my attitude. It's kind of fun to do. So I heartily recommend it. Either writing it down, which some people think is good, but I do mine on my iPad because it's easier.
Well,
So
they said
someday that may be something that historians will look at.
Well, Eric Larson wrote this book about Winston Churchill, and just recently it's called something in the vein. Anyway, whatever it's called, he got a lot of his information from the journals that were kept by all these British citizens who were encouraged by the government to keep those journals. So maybe my journal will come useful someday.
Oh, I never know. It's also very therapeutic. I mean, I journal all the time. Sometimes I get lazy and I don't do it every day, but I do journal, and I find it very healing for me, and very therapeutic. I think it's a good thing to do for the psychic.
I mean,
I was going to say, one of the things that perhaps doesn't feel healing is I really keep up with national affairs, and I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Globe every day. And I'm really, what worries me is not COVID as much as what's happening in our politics. And so in a sense, staying home gives me a sort of shield from everything else.
Fran, you were
Stay off the internet.
One of the other things I've taken advantage of is I have 2 small garden plots in front of my house between the front sidewalk, and I decided in the spring to redo the paths and put down fresh mulch and move stones around, and also to put in a lot of flowers because I thought all my neighbors needed some cheering up. And as I've been doing this on the nice weather, I mean, almost 3 or 4 people an hour, because I live near Harvard Street, stop, and a lot of them are my neighbors, and say, we love your garden, we love the flowers, thank you. And it's been a lot of fun doing that. So, it keeps you occupied. And I agree, I'd much rather put on a coat, and boots than deal with this 90-degree stuff. And I discovered that if you do laps in the Alston Stop and Shop and you go each aisle, it's a half a mile walk in air conditioning and nobody's there in the afternoon.
Oh my goodness, that's a good way to think about it.
Right. I've been very pleased that there's sports on TV. Unfortunately, it's so painful watching the Red Sox that I've kind of given up on that, but thank goodness there's the Celtics. So I've been following that, and hopefully they'll last long enough to give me something new to look forward to for the next few weeks.
So speaking of the upcoming period of time, and this was something that you mentioned, Susan, and I think it connects to some broader themes that are worth talking about. We're entering this election season, and our state primaries tomorrow, and so make your plan to vote if you haven't. Polling stations are open, but campaign season for a presidential campaign is something that draws up pretty strong feelings for most people. It happens once every 4 years. It's high consequence, and it's usually something that we do together. And that we talk about and we get together and we think about for a lot of folks. And so I'm wondering how you all are thinking about the coming couple months and what that's going to be like, and navigating that at whatever level of social distancing, or preferably physical distancing, not social distancing, to use Betsy's terminology. So yeah, where are you all at on that? Yeah, Ruth, go ahead.
Well, I have been, again, through Zoom, been able to participate in things like house meetings for candidates, and getting to learn more about issues and who's running. So I can't do it in person, but we can do it through technology. So that's been good. So that's one way I've been able to participate. And of course, like Susan, I'm kind of a political junkie, so I'm reading the papers and watching the news all the time, for better or for worse. And but I feel as if I'm part of what's going on politically. I don't feel as if I'm missing it, because I know that there's only certain ways in which things are being discussed. So I feel like I'm part of it.
And if you make even a small donation to anybody, you will get so much email and texts and
God,
things
yeah.
that you can't escape. So there's
And that's another way I feel like, by contributing to various candidates, I'm able to participate. So
If anything, I think we have more time now to focus on what's happening nationally, because when pre-COVID, my day was much more calendar, and there were lots of things to do. And I often didn't have time to spend more than half an hour or an hour at most looking at the news. And now I really do have more time, for better or worse. And, so I'm paying attention to a lot of details happening in other parts of the nation that I might not otherwise have been.
Yeah,
I've
Frank.
I've actually heard from a lot of my friends sort of saying that they wish they had less time to listen to the political and social things happening, and that they find it very upsetting, and they find it frustrating, and they find all these negative impulses and all negative talk to be rather stressful. And I know myself, I'm still on Facebook, and I've had to put several of my friends on 30-day sleep because I don't want to hear the negative political crap. They're putting 15 of them a day. So I think although we have more time to do it, and you can be equally involved, I just think that somehow with all the negativity combined with everything else that, I just don't want to do it as much as I used to.
I've never watched so many movies in my life as I'm watching these days. We have a couple of free sources for free movies through the Brookline Library. So even if you don't have Netflix, you can still watch free movies without commercials. So I suggest you check your Brookline Library website. The movies that I watch sometimes are classics, but they're much better than watching, cable TV, believe me.
Yeah, I agree. There's not much on cable TV. I have Netflix, so I watch a lot of movies on Netflix. But getting back to the news, I find it very stressful. So sometimes I just shut the TV off and don't even bother. Because it's just too much, it's really too much.
Yeah. I was an American history major when I was in college and in grad school. So for me, part of this is that we're actually living through history. And it's not necessarily the best time in history, but it really is majorly historic. And so every now and then I sort of step back and say, my goodness, look at what's happening, and how does this fit in with, our America's past? And you really get a perspective on how different our time is, and how decades from now, people will be looking back on us and what we've gone through. And so that helps give it more importance, I guess, and more meaning than it might otherwise have.
There's a Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times. I'll take boring times if you gave me a choice.
Yeah, no, boring seems a lot better these days.
But you know what, I wonder if each of you would admit that underlying your efforts to do all of the things you're doing, there isn't a sense of anxiety and discomfort inside your soul right now because of the many things that are going on all at once. It's sometimes overwhelming, even if you don't watch the TV and you don't think about it. I know for me, it's there all the time. Yeah. These are major things going on right now.
I think that's really important what you're saying, Bea. I think that, and I wonder how much of that is impacted by all of us are people who live alone. And so there isn't like nobody is bouncing their ideas off somebody else on a 24-hour, cycle. You have to reach out to somebody on a regular basis in order to share your thoughts. But they're not right there with you to bump into all the time. And I think that makes it a little more challenging to deal with these things.
And I think, to draw that out, we've been talking a little bit about politics, this moment in history, and how that's sitting, and, potentially some underlying feelings of anxiety or worry about that. To to knit it in with something that John, you mentioned earlier about missing things that you'd regularly do during the summer, you know, the longer this period of time stretches, you know, at whatever level of distance we're doing, the more life events we're gonna miss being there for, or are gonna happen in a different way. The more arcs of anxiety or worry about whatever, you know, whether it's politics or something else, we're going to experience. And so, you know, I'm curious, how are you all thinking about that in terms of on the longer time scale, missed events, weathering internal emotional storms that are from one place or another, because that can be harder to do on our own.
There's I don't know how many people are familiar with the Christmas Revels. It's a musical production that I go to with friends every year. It involves a crowded audience, packed audience at Sanders Theater, singing loudly. It's the worst possible environment that you can imagine. So even in August, they've canceled it. They're making a pretense that there will be a virtual version of it, but there's something missing about a large group of people singing together that you can't replicate over Zoom. And if they held it this year, I probably wouldn't go, because I think it is the worst possible environment. And it's something I look forward to every year. So we'll all miss it.
John, that's, I sing with a choral group, and we're clearly not singing. Singing is one of the most dangerous things you can do in the era of COVID. So that's been a big loss to no longer have that group. And even though they're offering for the season online kind of classes, but you're by yourself when you're singing. And one of the benefits of singing is something that you do with other people. And so I'm kind of struggling with whether I sign up and do this thing solitary on the Zoom, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to provide me with what I get out of, you're talking about being a listener, and I'm talking about being a participant. And singing is something that, you know, is really quite a marvelous thing to do with other people. And so that's hard to lose that. And that's not going to come back for a really long time. Rosalie, what were you gonna...
I agree with you, Betsy. I think that I miss the social interaction with humans, you know, with people, you know. I mean, I've taken a lot of classes at the Brookline Center over the years, and I've always taken 1 or 2 classes in the season. Now, I don't feel the need to do it online because it doesn't have the same effect, you know. So that's really hard. And getting back to Sanders Theater, I was there last year for a show, and I could see why they would not do the singing program there, because, you know, the seats are like, you're sort of sitting piled up on top of each other. You know, the seats are so close to each other. I don't know. I think it's really hard. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for me in the winter, because now I'm so used to venturing out and doing fun things and walking and meeting someone for a cup of coffee or whatever. But I'm not a winter person. I'm Caribbean. You know, I come from the island where there's sunshine every day. I mean, I have not lived there for, I've lived outside of the islands, you know, not for longer than I've lived here, but I don't know. I'm just not a winter person. And I don't know how I'm going to manage, because even though I bundle up and go out and walk, like Bea said, to me, it still doesn't feel the same like if you go out and walk in a 70 or 75 degree temperature, you know? So yeah. I think the warmth is good for the body too. So. I can't do it.
A couple of things. My advice to you, Betsy, is do it on Zoom anyway, because I agree that Zoom isn't like doing it, but my first Zoom experience was having a Passover Seder on Zoom, and there were 2 people from Paris and 3 people from Israel and 3 people from New York and a couple of people from Boston. And I wasn't going to do it, and it was like stupid. And I just really enjoyed it because it was so much better than grumbling by myself and being isolated and missing out on the holidays. So yes, these things aren't the same, but I think we need to push ourselves to do what we can do in a safe way. And, you know, Rosalind, I mean, I feel for you. I know hot weather people, after spending 5 years in North Carolina, when I came up, I didn't have any clothing that was suitable for New York again. But, you know, you could get used to it, and, you know, you just need, call me up and I'll advise you on the kind of clothes you need to keep yourself nice and toasty. Because as a
Listen,
birder, we go out there and do that all the time. And the other thing that I've been missing is I used to play ping pong twice a week at the senior center. And, you know, we're desperately looking for a way to find a place to put an outdoor ping pong table. You know, we don't think we can do it indoors. We were even going to buy our own table if we could find a place. And one of the reasons I go birding, even starting in March, a couple of times a week, is I needed exercise. And I walk a couple of miles. I have my camera, so I'm lifting weights, you know, and I'm not home being, let's face it, depressed, anxious, you know, bummed out at my experience and nibbling. And unlike all my friends, I've lost a couple of pounds instead of gaining the COVID-10, because I'm out there walking and experiencing things. And, you know, I enjoy the hunt for something special that I find on each trip. And, you know, I engage myself on being curious of what I see. And as a birder, okay, there are no birds. Well, there's some cool butterflies and there's dragonflies. And what is that silly bug? You know, so I think we need to force ourselves to get out there, do exercise, and occupy ourselves and do what we can do, instead of throw our hands up and say, well, it's not the same. I won't have the positiveness, but take what you can get in these times. That's my philosophy.
You know, Fran, that's really good advice. Push yourself, take that step into something you might not want to do, because you'll find that it's, you feel better for it. And and I totally agree. And I appreciate your ideas.
I was hoping to get back to the topic, though, of what are we going to do about future events? As John mentioned, the Sanders Theater. I was thinking just today about Thanksgiving and the holiday season, when we usually get together with people. How are we going to figure that out?
I think it's different. I think my friends are happy having 10 or 12 of us in my backyard for 4th of July or Labor Day barbecue. But I'm not sure they'd be happy doing things inside. And especially when you're getting together with family, you have multi-generational.
Right.
And I know my friends have similar COVID strategies, so they're sort of part of my COVID bubble. But I think it's something that is difficult, and I think what we need to do is explain to our family and friends what we need them to do to make us feel secure and why we need that. And, and then I think people also have to be less paranoid in Massachusetts, because we have like 1% positive rate in testing right now for months. Who knows what the college students or the kids going back to school will bring. But, that means 99 of 100 people who cough on you are going to give you a cold maybe, but they're not going to give you COVID. So, I think we have to decide what risks we're willing to take based on what's happening around us, and whether we could convince or explain to our friends and family why we need certain things for us to be secure.
Fran, that's true. Since we last spoke as a group, I went and visited friends on the Cape 2 different times for several days. And I'm going to Northampton Thursday to visit an old friend. And, we really, we decided that we could do this, that we would, have the windows open, be outside, not get too close together. And we, was able to go swimming in the ocean and take walks on a beach. And it was, it was wonderful. And it nagged at me, was this safe to do? I was trying to be as safe as could be, taking into account what you're saying about, it's Massachusetts, the incidence rate is low. But when my friend said, we may get together with our son and his girlfriend and all these teenagers and all these children, I said, I'm not going to join you for that, because that felt like I didn't know where all those people had been. And so, but I had to make draw a line at what I felt was safe and do what I felt, what was okay, and where the risk felt it was kind of edging into an area that wasn't comfortable for me. And so, you're very good at speaking up. And I think being able to speak up is really important, and being able to say what you can tolerate and what's okay and what isn't for you as the best, using your best judgment.
Yeah, I think, being from New York, it's easier to speak your mind. But being from New York, I also have had to learn how to throttle how I say things and try to be considerate of the people. And I find if you say something and explain why you feel the way you do, that they listen to you and they don't think you're just being annoying or whatever. So it's not that you're criticizing them. You need to explain why and how these things are important to you, and actually, get into a discussion of, well, is that mask really necessary? Do we all need N95 masks? Or, are you being ridiculous? And have a little bit of a back and forth. But we need to, I feel, do that, because as seniors, these years are important for us. And I'm not willing to give up a year of my senior life, to some stupid virus or to my fears. And you take precautions and try to keep safe, and you don't do things that you're uncomfortable with. But sorry, Susan, I don't want to sit in my house and just, hang out.
Well, one thing I'm missing, my granddaughter had been living with me, my high school age granddaughter had been living with me for nearly 2 years before COVID broke out. And so she left to go back to her family in New Jersey. And based on what's happening with Brookline schools, it's unlikely that she's going to be coming back until next year, because it doesn't seem as though it makes sense to have high school students fully in person as opposed to remote. So that's it took me a while to get used to having her live with me, but it also was really hard not having her here. And I still have some of her, little things that she had left, and she didn't pack up, and it's still there. And I look at it each day, and I do miss her, but I know that for her, it's much easier for her to be in a place where she has a huge backyard and a dog and her siblings. And, but, it does make me think, what other family events will we be missing? One of my youngest grandkids was supposed to have a bat mitzvah this spring, and that was, of course, canceled. But it's not clear whether there is going to be a substitute bat mitzvah a year from now. My daughter is also very careful about COVID issues. She actually had COVID and recovered from it. But because of that, she's really aware of how you don't want someone to have to go through that. So she's really very careful, and she doesn't think it's safe for her daughter to be coming here because of what it might mean for me. So that there's all sorts of additional levels of complication. And as you said, we don't have that many, we don't know how many more years we have left. If we all knew we had another 20, well, this would be just 1 year. If we know we have only 1 or 2, that changes everything. So there's so many different levels of uncertainty. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what sort of life expectancy we have. We just have to do the best we can. And I think what we've all been doing seems to be that, you know, we've decided to do what feels most comfortable to us personally. And I think it sounds like we've reached a sense that this is right for us, and it might not be right for someone else, but as long as we seem to be relatively content, I won't say deliriously happy, but content with, you know, I feel that we're very fortunate that, you know, we don't have hurricanes and tornadoes barreling down on us. We're not in a situation where so many people really have their lives totally upended. And I think we've been able to, within the scope of where we are, we're able to make decisions for ourselves. We have some control over what we're doing. And I think that gives us a sense that we're not totally at a loss for what's happening to us.
Ruth, I saw you putting your hand up a minute ago.
Yes, well, I missed my college reunion. I not only missed it, but I'd been on the planning committee, so I'd worked for quite a while. Not that I did a huge amount of work, but a whole group of us were putting time in and ideas, and then of course it just didn't happen. There was a little something online, but and it will, apparently they'll try to do it a year later with the next class, but it still was quite disappointing.
My fraternity chapter has a yearly dinner. And of course, that was canceled. It was supposed to be in May, but we did a Zoom meeting, and we had the best attendance ever because some people who wouldn't get on an airplane would sit in front of a Zoom camera with a beer in their hands and went for about 3.5 hours and didn't get boring. It's not the same as being together, but it's better than nothing.
You know, I've been meeting with a group by Zoom, a college group. I knew one of them. There are 3 or 4 I'd never met during college, and we've been talking every other Friday morning. We have a scheduled time, and it's really been very interesting. It's like we come from the same, the same period of time, and we had a lot of similar, experiences and back in the 60s. And it's become a very close-knit group just through Zoom. And everyone is talking, about how much they weren't sure what it would be like and how important it's become to each one of us. So that's been an unexpected pleasure for me.
Well, participating in these panels has been a pleasure for me because I only know 2 people out of this whole group. And so it's been fun finding out new friends in Brookline. So Zoom really helps a lot.
There's a lot of speculation that some of the things we've learned from being forced to be isolated, we can keep going even after the world opens up again.
At our last town meeting, we had the best attendance ever. And I suspect that when things go back to normal, that the possibility of having people participate remotely might be part of what, is considered the norm going forward. And I think that's a good thing, because I think there are people who, for health reasons or for childcare reasons, can't always attend every meeting of, that they really want to be at. And I think that gives people more possibilities than they had in the past and more comfort in doing it.
Susan, you and I are on the same steering committee, and Frank and I have had some discussions about continuing these meetings even after, in-person meetings are possible again.
Really? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I'm president of the Brookline Senior Center, as many of you probably know. And so our board meetings have all been by Zoom, and they've been, at first it felt a little stilted, and now it feels normal and comfortable, and people can be anywhere and call in rather than having to get to the meeting, on a particular evening. So I think maybe we'll be able to take some of these new technology things that we've been forced into and bring them forward with us when this is all over. And that's
well, I've been always loving going to the Booksmith for those author evenings where the author talks to us for about an hour about their latest book. And now you can visit these same author readings virtually, not only at the Booksmith, but at about 25 or 30 bookstores all over the country. So I watched one that was on Nantucket, and when they're interviewing an author and they're right there on the screen, it feels like they're in my living room. So I really think that people might enjoy trying that, watching these. If you're a bookworm like me, watching some of these author interviews on Zoom.
Where do you get those links, Bea?
Well, in the Boston Globe, every Sunday they have a list of readings, and they're all virtual. And they tell which bookstore it is, and you just go to the website of that bookstore.
Okay.
The Booksmith has a website, and the Porter Square Books has a website, and the Harvard Bookstore has a website. And they all have a list on there of their upcoming events and explain how to sign up.
Terrific.
And they're 90% of them are free, which is even better.
Yeah, I think one of the positives of this is that the Senior Center did a survey, or Brookline Can, one of the senior Brookline groups, that 40 or 50% of seniors didn't do things online. And I think COVID has forced them to do it. And the Senior Center has a lot of their programs virtual. And I don't know if those of you remember or know, there used to be a bunch of kids who would come in, as well as adults, who would give you one-on-one instruction on how to use a smartphone or how to use the computer. And those services are still available. So if you contact the Senior Center, if you need help learning how to get online, you can do that, and they can help you. You don't necessarily have to have internet, because if you have a smartphone or an iPad that runs on cell minutes, you can use that. So I think one of the positives that we need to take advantage of is expanding the repertoire of what seniors have access to, especially as we age or as we're ill, and winter comes and we can't get out in the cold, and you still can do things online. And I think it's a great thing that more seniors are taking advantage and learning about the wide world of the web.
Rosalind, I saw you nodding along with some of that. Anything coming
No,
into
I agree. I mean, Fran has some great ideas. I just
Thank you.
I'm gonna be calling you, Fran.
Yes.
No, but
Okay, you have my email and my number.
I don't know.
I help all my friends.
I get that from Michael. I don't have it. So.
Yeah.
With respect to getting tech help from the Senior Center, we do have some folks who will do one-on-ones by phone to help people set things up. So you can call 617-730-2777. Anyone who wants to, that's our main services line. So feel free to tell folks.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Yep, 617-730-2777.
Thank you.
That's our main line for calling to get any kind of services from the Senior Center. And we've gotten lots of calls for people who need help setting up Zoom, or how do I do this with email? So that's definitely a support that we can provide to folks around town. Also, It's been a rich and good conversation, and we are coming up on the end of our hour. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today, for sharing, some of your time and also some of your experiences. And, we got into some thoughts about how we're feeling about missing out on parts of our lives or how we've adapted, and that's great. So I want to thank all of you. Definitely want to thank Brookline Interactive Group for hosting us and doing our tech for this and streaming the conversation. I want to thank Frank Caro and Brookline Can for convening this. And then obviously all of us at the Brookline Council on Aging and the Senior Center for playing the role that we did. So thank you all so much for coming, for participating. Come a few months, we will reconvene. We'll do it again, and we'll see where we're all at. So thanks so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Michael,
okay.
for
Thank you.
helping all of our discordant voices come through.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks,
And we've
Michael.
all enjoyed it. I think
Thanks,
we've all
everyone.
gotten so much out of this.
Yes.
All
Okay.
right.
Glad to hear it.